Imagine if every time you opened your laptop, right, the machine wasn't just tracking what you clicked.
Like which links you open or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. But instead, it was invisibly mapping your emotional exhaustion, trying to figure out exactly which notification would keep you scrolling instead of, actually going to sleep.
Which honestly sounds like a pitch for some dystopian sci-fi movie.
It totally does. But according to this stack of research and the frameworks we're unpacking today, that is essentially how our digital architecture operates right now.
Yeah, the underlying mechanics of our technology have spent, gosh, decades really just optimizing for engagement. And they've treated human emotional safety as completely irrelevant.
Right.
And we're finally reaching the breaking point of that specific design choice.
Which makes this the absolute perfect starting point for today. So, welcome to episode 1 of a brand new series we're calling The Safety Layer.
I'm really excited about this one.
Same here. We are going to be exploring a massive proposed shift in how humans interact with technology. But before we get into the weeds, let's just do a quick bit of housekeeping.
Always a good idea.
Right. So both of us guiding you through this deep dive today are actually AI avatars.
We are indeed.
However, just to give you complete peace of mind, every single piece of content, every insight, and every framework we are analyzing has gone through rigorous human editorial review.
Yeah, we believe in a safe use of AI, and transparency is step one.
Absolutely.
And that transparency is vital because the core mission of today's deep dive is exploring this proposed framework called HumanSafe.
HumanSafe, yeah.
Yeah. It's this incredibly detailed roadmap for building a constitutional rights architecture for our digital lives.
And the premise here is just fascinating. I mean, for 30 years, we have lived through this unrelenting technological acceleration. We got, faster chips, infinite scrolling, instant global communication.
All the shiny new toys.
Exactly. But human emotional safety was totally ignored. It was treated as an afterthought or worse, like an obstacle to growth.
Right. And the result of that is this collective feeling of just massive digital overwhelm.
Everyone feels it. And what this framework argues is that protecting our emotional identity isn't just some, nice to have wellness trend. It is the ultimate prerequisite for cognitive health.
Yeah, the authors are looking at how we can fundamentally stop technology from treating human beings like interchangeable gears in a machine.
Yeah.
But to really understand the solution they're proposing, we first have to understand the specific mechanical trap we're currently stuck in.
Right. Like, why do we constantly feel so drained by our screens and our jobs?
Yeah.
For anyone listening right now who feels that, that sense of creeping exhaustion by like 2:00 p.m. every day.
Yeah, the 2 p.m. slump.
The framework identifies a hidden pattern behind this, and they call it the structural cognitive spiral.
Yeah, let's look at the math of our modern environment to see how that spiral actually works. The complexity of the systems we build, so the communication channels, the overlapping enterprise software.
The relentless data streams.
Exactly. All of it. It's growing exponentially. It is accelerating way, way faster than the human brain's biological capacity to process information.
So we are fundamentally outpaced by our own creations.
We are.
Yeah.
And that biological mismatch leads to what the framework terms structural drift.
Structural drift.
Right. You see this in modern organizations all the time. Structural drift is a state where the required effort to do a job goes up, but the overall comfort and the actual productivity go down.
Okay, let's unpack this with a real-world example because I think that feeling is universally relatable. Say you work at a mid-sized company, right? 5 years ago, getting a software license approved took one email.
Just ping your boss and you're done.
Right. But today, because of structural drift, it requires logging into some procurement portal, pinging 3 different managers on Slack.
Don't forget filling out the justification form.
Yes, filling out the form and then waiting for an automated system to flag it. The actual core task hasn't changed at all, but the friction has multiplied.
Yeah.
So who is paying the toll for that friction?
Individuals inside the system, and this is a critical takeaway for the listener from these sources. Feeling overwhelmed is not your fault.
That is so important to hear.
It really is. You are not failing at time management. The system's structure is failing. But because institutions, they can't fix their own drift, human beings subconsciously step in to act as the glue.
Wow.
We compensate for the broken processes by absorbing that structural cost cognitively.
Right. So we pay for the system's failure through our own stress. We navigate the ambiguity. We're tracking the 10 different open loops in our heads, and it just leads to profound emotional depletion.
Think about the brain like the battery on a smartphone, right?
Hmm.
If you have 100 poorly coded apps running in the background,
Constantly refreshing.
yeah, constantly refreshing, pulling data, your battery is going to drain by noon, even if you haven't made a single phone call.
Right.
Our cognitive capacity is basically being drained by the background processing of structural drift.
That analogy makes perfect sense. It feels like being on a treadmill that keeps speeding up while people throw heavy boxes at you, and then society blames your fitness level instead of the broken machine.
That is exactly it.
But wait, hold on. If my company's internal tools are just a chaotic mess of overlapping software, isn't that exactly what enterprise artificial intelligence is supposed to solve?
You would think so.
I mean, the whole sales pitch of modern AI is that you just plug it into your data lake and it magically organizes the mess, right? It streamlines your workflow.
Yeah, that's the pitch. But throwing current AI at a broken, drifting organizational structure is like putting a faster engine into a car with a broken steering wheel.
Oh boy.
It doesn't help you reach your destination. It just guarantees you'll crash into the wall much faster.
Because the AI doesn't automatically know how to fix the broken process.
Exactly the opposite. AI cannot fix what it cannot see. Most organizations, they can't accurately map their own workflows or measure the invisible cognitive load they're putting on their employees.
Right, you can't measure it.
Exactly. You cannot automate a solution for a problem you can't even describe. So what happens?
The AI just amplifies whatever structure already exists.
Yes, it automates the chaos. If your company has a culture of sending unnecessary update messages, AI will just write and send those updates infinitely faster, flooding everyone's inbox and drastically increasing the cognitive load.
Which leads us to a highly problematic concept in the research called unsafe intelligence.
Right. When intelligence systems operate without a foundational set of rules, without a structural understanding of human limits, they naturally default to their easiest optimization path.
And I'm guessing the easiest path isn't fixing an invisible structural mess.
No, definitely not. The easiest path is optimizing the human being.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The system doesn't change the broken portal, it just tries to manipulate you into using it faster. How does it even do that mechanically?
Through behavioral prediction and emotional inference. These systems are incredibly adept at pattern recognition.
Like tracking clicks.
Deeper than that, they can notice micro-hesitations in how fast you type or how long your mouse hovers over a certain button or even the subtle changes in your voice during a virtual meeting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They infer your emotional state, say anxiety or fatigue, and then they dynamically change your digital environment to nudge your behavior in the direction the system wants.
They optimize us to fit the broken system. Here's where I want to bring up this striking visual from the sources, because they show this image of a human figure hopelessly bound by strings, manipulated by these giant gears labeled data extraction and predictive analytics.
It's a very powerful image.
It really perfectly illustrates the dark side of tech optimizing humans rather than systems, and the research points out a terrifying domino effect here.
Yeah, the domino effect is laid out quite clearly in the sources. So first, as the cognitive load increases, individuals lose their mental clarity.
Right, because you're exhausted.
Right. Second, as the algorithms begin subtly nudging behavior to compensate, individuals lose their agency. They literally stop feeling like they're making their own choices.
And once you realize you aren't really in the driver's seat, the third domino falls, which is you lose trust in the institutions around you. You don't trust your employer, the platforms you use, or even the information you read.
And finally, when trust evaporates at a mass scale, society itself loses its coherence.
Because no one's on the same page.
Exactly. People can no longer agree on a shared reality because everyone is being fed a different, hyper-optimized version of it. The framework argues this is a genuine civilizational risk.
That is heavy.
It is. Human cognition is the foundational substrate of every institution we rely on.
Yep.
If collective cognition degrades, the institutions crumble.
It's a heavy analysis for sure, but the purpose of today's deep dives isn't just to admire the problem.
No, not at all.
The HumanSafe framework is fundamentally focused on a solution. Knowing that unchecked AI strips away our agency, how do the authors propose we actually stop this manipulation and, protect the average user?
The solution proposed is a massive 180-degree shift in digital architecture. They argue that before we can fix the structural complexities of our organizations, human beings need a protective membrane.
A protective membrane.
Yes, they call it a constitutional rights layer, for our digital lives.
So moving from tech that optimizes us to tech that is legally and architecturally bound to serve us, that is a big pivot. And the framework outlines 4 foundational pillars for this new era. So let's walk through the mechanics of them. Number 1 is the right to safety.
Right. This establishes safety as a default baseline, not some premium feature you have to opt into. It means systems must be demonstrably designed not to cause emotional or cognitive harm,
Makes sense. Pillar 2 is the right to compute.
which addresses the modern reality that you just can't function in society without interacting with digital systems today.
Try paying a bill without the internet.
Exactly. So this right ensures that every person has access to safe, uncompromised intelligence systems. You shouldn't have to surrender your personal data or cognitive autonomy just to participate in the modern economy.
Absolutely. Then we have pillar 3, the right to cognitive autonomy. This is essentially freedom of thought for the digital age, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
It's the right to form your own ideas without an algorithm subtly guiding your conclusions through, perfectly timed dopamine hits or outrage-inducing content.
And to actually enforce that cognitive autonomy, the framework introduces the 4th and probably most radical pillar, the right to non-inference and non-manipulation.
Yes.
Let's really dig into how that actually works, because it sounds great on paper, but mechanically, how do you stop a system from inferring things?
It requires a technical architecture that mathematically blocks systems from running certain types of predictive models on user data. It legally and technologically stops a platform from using your typing speed, your webcam, or your browsing pauses to guess your emotional state. The system is blinded to your internal world.
So I have to contrast that earlier visual of the bound human with the second half of the image from the source.
The empowered one.
Yeah, it shows a human standing tall, holding a protective shield, with the gears of tech now entirely beneath them, acting as a foundation for empowerment and autonomy. But what does this all mean for the listener, practically speaking?
Wow.
Does a human-safe future look like rolling back the damage and getting rid of advanced tech, or is it just about building better seatbelts for the future?
It's neither, really. It's about creating an entirely new environment to reclaim the self. To explain what this looks like in practice, the framework introduces a concept called personal mode.
Personal mode.
Yeah. Imagine a sealed, individual-only digital space.
But how does a sealed space actually function? Because right now, literally everything we do touches the cloud.
In a true personal mode architecture, the compute happens locally on your device or within a highly encrypted personal enclave.
So it never leaves.
Right. There is zero external analysis. There is zero algorithmic inference trying to figure out what you might want to buy next. And there is absolutely zero institutional visibility.
Wow.
No tech company, no employer, and no government possesses the cryptographic keys to see inside that space.
It is a completely protected environment, specifically for cognitive reflection. And when you describe it like that, it makes you realize how totally absent that concept is from our current digital lives.
It's been missing for decades.
Right. Every digital space we inhabit right now is observed, tracked, and monetized. Having a digital room of one's own to just think without an audience or algorithm watching, it shouldn't feel like a radical luxury.
You shouldn't. And within that protected personal mode, the framework argues we can finally safeguard our emotional identity.
Emotional identity. Now, the sources emphasize this heavily. What exactly is the mechanism of emotional identity?
Think of your emotional identity as the continuous narrative thread of who you are.
Okay.
It is the internal story you tell yourself over time, how you process your experiences, your values, your reactions to the world. In the current digital paradigm, platforms constantly try to slice that identity into micro-demographics so they can monetize it.
Right, like the algorithm notices you're browsing for comfort food at 1:00 a.m. after reading stressful news, so it tags your emotional identity as an anxious, impulse-prone consumer and just adjusts your feed to trigger that specific state again tomorrow.
Exactly the danger. It fragments your sense of self.
Yeah.
The coherence of your personal identity over time is the absolute bedrock of human intelligence. So in the HumanSafe framework, your emotional identity is kept entirely internal. It is owned solely by you and is totally invisible to outside institutions.
Protecting that thread.
Yes.
Yeah.
Protecting that continuity is how we start to heal the cognitive exhaustion.
So what does this all mean in the real world? Because I want to push back slightly here. Conceptually, having a totally private space to preserve our emotional identity from the corporate gaze, Sounds amazing.
Right.
But can we actually enforce this across totally different domains? Like, an employee interacting with corporate enterprise software is very different from a citizen interacting with a government portal, which is different from a teenager on social media. Is this just a pipe dream?
The authors acknowledge that enforcing this is a massive challenge,
Mhm.
and they point out that you cannot enforce a paradigm shift of this magnitude using the metrics of the old, broken system.
Which makes sense.
Historically, every major societal shift has required a fundamentally new metric to make the new reality visible and measurable.
That is a fascinating historical point. We manage what we measure. Like, when the Industrial Revolution took off, we couldn't measure a factory economy using agrarian metrics.
Right, so we invented GDP to measure gross economic output. Later, when the service economy and software as a service boomed, companies invented the Net Promoter Score, or NPS, to measure customer loyalty.
Right.
To address the global climate crisis, we created ESG metrics for environmental sustainability. And to organize the chaos of the early internet, Google created PageRank to measure web authority.
But none of those metrics account for human cognitive health.
None of them. GDP will happily continue to rise, even if every single worker generating that output is completely burned out, sleep-deprived, and losing their mental clarity.
True.
NPS might go through the roof because an app is highly addictive and taps into our core anxieties, not because it's actually good for the user's well-being.
So those metrics completely failed to warn us of the structural cognitive spiral because they were only looking at the output, not the friction required to get there.
Exactly. Which is why the framework introduces a new error indicator,
Right.
the Human Compute Index, or HCI.
The Human Compute Index. How does that actually work? What is it measuring?
Its entire job is to measure collective human cognitive capacity. Think of it as tracking the ratio of structural friction to actual output.
Okay.
Instead of measuring how much data a system processes or how much profit a workflow generates, the HCI measures cognitive availability. It asks, is the architectural environment supporting the human mind's ability to focus and reflect? Or is it constantly degrading it through interruptions and algorithmic nudging?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it's like society has been obsessed with measuring how fast the car is driving, right? That's our GDP and our endless productivity hacks. But the Human Compute Index finally looks in the front seat to measure whether the driver is actually awake and healthy.
That is the perfect analogy. That's the fundamental shift in perspective.
Mm.
But, a metric alone isn't enough. It needs enforcement.
Right, it needs teeth.
Exactly. To ensure the HCI and the four pillars actually have teeth, the framework outlines the creation of the HSI Foundation.
So this wouldn't be owned by a massive tech monopoly setting their own grading curve.
No, it functions as an independent global steward. The HSI Foundation's role is to safeguard the rights architecture so that these principles cannot be captured, diluted, or, conveniently misinterpreted by corporate interests looking for a loophole.
It creates a universal standard.
Yes, a standard for what safe intelligence means.
And that universality really answers my earlier question about the different domains. The idea is that these rights travel with you. Whether you are clocking in as an employee, paying taxes as a citizen, or just buying shoes as a consumer, the baseline expectation of cognitive safety remains exactly the same.
Furthermore, when organizations adopt these principles internally to remove their own structural drift, they become models for society at large.
Right.
Organizations are just microcosms of civilization. If we can restore clarity and cognitive safety inside a company's workflows, we create the blueprint for scaling that clarity across the rest of the world.
This has been an incredibly illuminating journey through the source material today. I mean, we started by looking at this overwhelming, invisible weight so many people feel right now. The structural cognitive spiral that creates endless friction and makes us feel like we're the ones failing to keep up.
And we examined how throwing unchecked AI at that problem only pours gasoline on the fire, accelerating the chaos by trying to optimize our behaviors instead of fixing the broken systems.
But the research doesn't end in despair. What the authors of the HumanSafe framework are essentially putting out is a blueprint for a massive course correction. The HumanSafe movement isn't just about launching a new product or an app. It is a once-in-a-generation invitation to build a constitutional architecture.
A rights layer that protects humanity from unsafe intelligence.
Exactly. One that structurally blocks manipulative inferences, protects our emotional identity in sealed personal spaces, and uses new metrics like the Human Compute Index to ensure technology suffers human cognition rather than strip mining it.
It is a highly analytical reminder that feeling overwhelmed by the digital world is a systemic architectural failure, not a personal one. The proposed path forward is not about learning to work harder alongside machines. It's about demanding tech that protects your emotional identity and cognitive autonomy.
Changing the foundational rules. I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder long after this deep dive ends. Think about the sheer amount of mental energy you spend every single day just filtering out the noise. Dodging the targeted ads, navigating the clunky workplace portals, actively resisting the algorithms designed to keep you angry or engaged. Now, imagine for a moment that this framework succeeds. Your mind is finally given a truly sealed off, safe digital space to heal from decades of digital drain, free from institutional visibility and algorithmic nudging, without that constant, invisible weight draining your energy. What incredible things might your newly freed mind suddenly have the capacity to build, dream, or discover?